Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and it's full review time. I missed my first impressions on this, I think. I'm not positive. It's possible that I did it and just don't remember, but I'm pretty sure I missed the boat on that, just timing-wise of when this came in, what else I had going on, and all that. But this is the Spartan Talos. It is one of their field-grade knives, or bronze line knives. Actually, I have the box here. Yeah, field grade. So, Spartan field grade. This is one of their overseas produced knives, so I believe they use a factory in Taiwan to build these, but Spartan is based in North Carolina, and I've talked to Curtis over there, awesome dude. I've reviewed the Spartan Harsey folder before, which basically is this but bigger and made there in their shop. So this is a Bill Harsey design. Essentially, this is the exact same design and knife as the smaller Spartan Harsey folder, the 3.25 I think they call it. This is the same dimensions as that from what I understand, and it's basically just a overseas production version of that knife, and different in construction in the sense that this one is a G10 liner lock, the other one is a titanium frame lock, and this one is CTS XHP. I believe they're using S45 VN on the ones in North Carolina that they're building. But I was excited when I got this knife in hand when I unboxed it, because I had handled the smaller Spartan Harsey folder once. Like I said, I've reviewed the full-size one. I had borrowed a loaner one. I ended up getting another one on a trade at one point, and then I had sold that to fund something else. But I've had the larger Harsey folder, and it's a sweet knife. I really quite like it. It's plausible that I'll end up with another one at some point. But the smaller version of it, the one that I handled, and to be fair, it was just one, and I think it was one of the first few that they built, it just didn't feel quite as refined as its bigger brother to me. And the action in particular just felt a little bit gritty. It might have still needed to break in. It could have been a variety of things. But for those reasons, when I ordered this one, I was kind of expecting it to be less nice than the one that I had already experienced, because it's significantly less money. Those are, I don't know, a little over $400, I think, for the US built ones. These are like $125. So yeah, I wasn't expecting it to like be that good, but I really wanted to check it out, and I was pleasantly surprised right off the bat. The action on it feels better than that little one that I handled. I'm sure there have got to be the ones that they're making now, or maybe that one even now that it's broken in, they're probably better now, but this is just, it feels nicer than the little one I'd handled before. And then also, the way that this G10 is done, I have found that it feels nice. I like it. There's only one skinny liner, and it's for the liner lock. Show side, there's no liner, and it's mostly just a solid G10 construction, and so it's very lightweight. I have found that it's a great little secondary. So yeah, I've been impressed with this for a kind of budget-friendly version of a really cool knife, and for the materials that it comes in at $125, I think it's a pretty compelling value. So let's talk about it in terms of action, ergos, carry, cutting, those kind of typical things I discuss. And then I've actually got to box this up because I've decided I'm going to give it to my dad for Father's Day. So I think he's going to really like this knife, and I enjoy it quite a bit. I certainly wouldn't mind keeping it. I've enjoyed carrying it to review it and all that. But I think this is a knife that he'll enjoy, and I wanted to do something a little special for him. So I should mention as well, this is a knife that I got from Rivers Edge Cutlery. Anytime I get something from Rivers Edge Cutlery, I like to shout them out because they're my favorite retailer. I just really, really like those guys. They're super supportive of the channel in a number of ways. And yeah, they're just cool dudes. So this is something I got from them. When I looked yesterday, I was on the site, I saw that these are still in stock at the moment on Rec's site. So I will link to Rivers Edge Cutlery down below. Check them out if you haven't before. They are, again, my favorite retailer. So let's start with ergos on this guy. This is a fairly small knife. 3¼ inch blade is what I gather. And there are a lot of grooves on the handle, which can be kind of a dangerous game to play. Grooves tend to isolate people with certain size hands, because then you land on the points of them instead of in the grooves, and that's not comfortable. But for me, with my medium glove, although I fill them out real well, hands, these grooves work perfectly. It fits my hands super, super well. And my dad has like the same size hands as me, which is part of why I think he's going to really like this and it's going to fit his hand well. But for me, these ergos are really good. I'm not a big jimping fan. I'd prefer it if this jimping wasn't here, but this jimping doesn't bother me per se. It's not hot spotty or anything like that. I just don't really, it doesn't add anything for me to have jimping back here or up here. But again, none of the jimping on this knife is too aggressive. None of it is really bothering me. There's also a little bit on the lock bar to release it there on that liner lock, but none of it is sharp. None of it's frustrating me. It's just kind of there. But yeah, the actual profile of this handle, you can see I get all 4 fingers on it, but I don't have a lot of extra real estate there to work with otherwise. My thumb tends to want to land in a saber grip kind of in front of the jimping, right in this kind of nook here, and I like that. But it's really, in a saber grip, it's a very, very comfortable knife. And it feels, because of, I think, kind of this curve back here, the way the handle kind of slopes downward, it just kind of feels a little bit pointed, which I like. Yeah, it feels nice. I like the size and profile of this handle. The clip isn't really digging into my hand or anything. I can feel that it's there, certainly, but it's not hot spotty. It's not gouging me. Hammer grip is very comfortable. Saber grip is very comfortable. Draw cut is actually quite comfortable. That feels really good. Reverse grip, very good. I like this spot back here for my thumb. That feels nice. Reverse grip draw cut, totally doable. So even though this handle has quite a bit of shape to it, and with all these grooves and stuff, I find that it's more neutral than I would have thought it would be just looking at this handle visually before handling it. So I like the Ergos. I think it's a good knife for my hands, at least ergonomically. And this G10 has a nice texture as well. It's not overly gritty, but it's certainly got some grip to it. It just feels nice. It's a peel ply G10, and yeah, it's somewhat common for G10 to either be too rough or to just be like really smooth. Sometimes polished G10 feels good to me, but I definitely think there's a line of too rough, and some people cross that a little too frequently. This feels like a good level of texture without feeling like it's trying to eat up your hands. This doesn't strike me as a knife that you're supposed to use with the gloves on, with its size and build type. I mean, sure, you could, but for a bare-handed knife, this feels like the right level of grip texture. All right, let's talk action for a second. So it's thumb studs only for deployment. Thumb studs aren't generally my favorite method of deployment. They're not the worst either, but they don't like excite me. That said, some thumb stud knives do it better than others. I think a lot of it has to do with the geometry of where the thumb stud itself is in relation to the pivot, and how much access you have to get your thumb onto it, and how proud it is, how much traction you get on it. And this is one that's just dialed quite well. The action feels poppy. Like if I push straight forward, the detent is dialed in a way that it just every single time deploys all the way. Being such a G10 thorough construction, it sounds a little bit like kind of hollow in a way. Like it's just like, I don't know, it doesn't have any ting like a titanium knife would, but listen to this. Just sounds less metallic than other knives, but it's interesting. It's unique. I can middle finger flick it. That works using the thumb stud. So you know me. If I can, I will. I middle finger flick this knife quite a bit. But yeah, for a thumb stud knife, it's good. In terms of closure, certainly not drop shutty. I've never tuned this knife. I haven't added any lube or anything. It may be possible to get it more drop shutty than this, but it even on like the big Spartan Harsey folder that's made in their shop, I don't recall that knife being particularly drop shutty either. These run on washers. It doesn't seem like it's even supposed to be drop shutty. It does also look like it could potentially be front flipped with this little nub up here. I haven't found that it really works too well for that. I think if a little bit of this G10 was removed, then you may have better access for it, but the way it sits, I haven't found that I can reliably in any way front flip this, I should say. So yeah, you can You can middle finger flick, or you can thumb flick. It's dialed well for a knife on thumb studs to deploy and do so reliably. Accessing the lock bar to disengage the lock is a breeze. That little bit of jimping there definitely gives you a very positive traction on it, and it just works. I find you'll notice when I close it, most of the time I'm just pressing it all the way shut. I'm not trying to let gravity do its thing, because gravity isn't going to do its thing on here. It's easier to just pop it out and then kind of slow roll it shut, if that makes sense. So does that make it an exciting action for me? No. It does not stand out in my collection of knives as being a fun one to play with, but isolated on its own, like, yeah, it's a pretty fun thumb flick. It's satisfying to deploy, and it works. It's reliable. So there you have that. Let's talk carry for a second. So one of the things that I really like about this knife is that it gets a loop over style deep carry clip. The US made counterpart to this knife does not have a clip like this, if I remember correctly. I know at least the big one doesn't. Now I'm questioning myself. The small one might, but I don't think it does. I'm pretty sure they have non-deep carry clips on the North Carolina built ones. So this one gets a loop over style deep carry clip. It is actually recessed down into the G10, which I really like. But the screws aren't countersunk. That would be the icing on the cake if those were. However, you do have plenty of room under there. This is a very effective pocket clip. It works really, really well. I've carried this, I think every time that I've carried it, it's been as a secondary back left pocket. It might have snuck into a front right pocket once. No, you know what? It has, because I've carried it like on a run one time in running shorts in my front right pocket, and then I think also I might have carried it on a run just tucked into my waistband at one point. But the pocket clip is good. It's nice, easy in and out of pocket while still having plenty of retention. I've never felt this moving around or feeling like it's going to slip out or anything like that. So it stays in pocket, but it's easy to put in, easy to get out. The clip itself, what's interesting is it doesn't have like a plateau here on the tip. It just comes straight up and doesn't flatten back out. But again, in hand, it doesn't feel hot spotty to me. I think maybe because of the way the whole thing kind of ramps downward, and the tallest point is up here. It's comfortable in hand, even though it kind of comes to a point there. It is nice and round, however, it's not actually pointed. So I don't know. Looking at it, I would think, oh, this might be a potential hot spot, but it's really not. I like the way the clip feels in hand. I like the way it functions in pocket. The knife is very lightweight, being so G10 focused in its construction and not having much steel other than the blade and a small lock bar. So yeah, it's very light, very thin in pocket. The profile specifically this way across here is very, very thin. I like that. Thickness this way, not very thick at all. It doesn't feel like it's ultra thin. It's not like TRM Neutron thin, but it's thin. And I don't know, it's comfortable to hold on to. While it's got enough meat in the grip to feel substantial in my hand, like it's not going to slip out. I feel like I've got enough knife to hold on to, but it's balanced with being a nice, compact, small, thin, light package. So it carries really, really well. I will say, small pet peeve of mine, it's a deep carry clip, but there's still knife sticking out of the pocket. The shape of this handle is really what's to blame there. That's just a thing that happens sometimes when you've got a handle that comes to a point like that. But I would love it if this didn't leave any knife sticking out of the pocket. That's always my preference, but that's a small nitpick. All right, so last kind of category I usually try to cover would be cutting. This blade in CTS XHP I've been really happy with. I like XHP as a steel. I wouldn't say it's like ultimate top tier at this point, but on a $125 knife, I think it's very fair as a steel choice selection. I like it in this range, certainly. The edge that came on it, stupid sharp. The edge that's on it, still very, very sharp. I haven't stropped this or anything. I've used it quite a bit. Carrying this as a secondary, it's been through a lot of cardboard. It's opened quite a few boxes, a lot of packaging, toys for my daughter, my typical kind of stuff. I have cut at least one apple with this. I think I might have used it twice. It's not like super thin, slicey geometry. The blade isn't very tall, and it's a flat grind, but it's not super thin stock, and it comes down to an edge profile it's not like a very thin behind the edge knife. In fact, it's a little thicker than I would ultimately prefer, but does feel a little bit robust and kind of like maybe well-rounded. I don't know. I prefer slicier knives for sure. So maybe I'm being too nice here because I find this knife kind of charming. I like it, but a thinner edge profile would be better in my opinion. I think that it would benefit from being thinner behind the edge because a metric like slicing an apple is, I think, a good indicator of whether a knife is actually slicey or not. This knife, it doesn't slice as cleanly as other folding knives that I have. I'm not even comparing it to like a thin kitchen knife or whatever, but I have folding knives, several, that if I cut an apple, they're going to slice super well and cleanly, and it's going to feel like the apple slices, not like it splits, right? And this is one of those where it's like, it does, because it's very sharp and it's a flat grind, it slices okay, but the blade being relatively kind of stubby in this direction and getting thick rather quickly, it does tend to like split the apple a little bit if you're making a continuous cut down through it. But again, the edge that came on it is very good. The steel choice is good. The actual profile I find quite useful, especially for things like opening like little packaging components of things like my daughter's toys and stuff. I talk about it all the time. There's like little tiny zip ties and tiny rubber bands and stuff that hold these toys secured into their packaging. So like it's not uncommon for me to cut through a clamshell package, like through the plastic part of it, get the thing out, and then have to cut these little intricate tiny little things in there. And specifically blades with a precise tip I find are super handy for stuff like that. So in my day-to-day usage, I like a blade profile like this, where I've got a nice defined precise tip that I can get down into things, nooks and crannies, and make small precise cuts. But then it's also a nice simple blade shape where I've got kind of some flat, a little bit of belly. I can slice through things like cardboard for processing stuff for the dumpster, and it just performs well. It's not like a shining star, it's not the sliciest knife ever, but for where this knife sits kind of in its use philosophy, being from a knife company that's like a little bit tactical, and they're not like fidgety focused, they're not like cardboard warrior focused, they're like a little bit more hard use than that is kind of the way that they see themselves and the way that I think that they are. And so this being a smaller, like a little bit scaled down folder for them, I think they've struck a pretty cool balance where it feels like it still has Spartan blades in it, still feels like Spartan Harsey folder, but it is shrunk down and it is a little bit of a thinner blade stock than you'll find on an actual like big Spartan Harsey folder, and it works. They've balanced it out in some way. So I don't know. Is it a perfect knife? No. I don't know if there is such a thing, but I enjoy it. I've found that I've just been impressed with this knife, and I've carried it quite a bit because I've had it for a while now, to be fair. It's probably been well over a month that I've had this knife, so it's been in pocket a lot of times. I've done quite a bit of cutting with it, and at first it was like, oh, this is better than I thought it was going to be. Like, I'm a little bit impressed with this. And then over time, I've just found it's kind of a charming knife to carry and use. Something about it just makes me kind of happy. I enjoy it. I like that it's the OD green G10. That makes me happy. I'm wearing pants that are like almost the exact same color right now. I like that it's XHP in this price range. I like that Spartan is playing this game now where, and some people may not agree with this, but the idea that they're using overseas manufacturing to bring their products to people who otherwise couldn't afford their, I don't know what grade they call it now. Again, this is field grade, but they have different tiers, and their US made stuff is their high tier, right? And there are quite a few people who aren't going to spend $450, $500 on a knife. It's just not in their realm. But for people who play in the $100 to $200 range to now have options of true Spartan designs, this one's a William Harsey design, but true Spartan knife designs, right? I like that accessibility kind of coming down, and that they're still using a decent blade steel, and that the construction feels nice. And I mean, it makes sense to me. I dig it, and it's made me happy carrying and using this knife. I like the people behind the brand, so does that make me a little bit biased? Maybe. It would be impossible for me to remove that from my mind, that I like the guys over there. But I've also been somewhat critical in all of the reviews that I've done of their products. I've talked about the things that I don't like. So I'm certainly not just shilling. Spartan didn't even send this to me. I got this from Rivers Edge Cutlery. So call it what it is. This wasn't a free Spartan knife from them or anything like that. I just have genuinely been a little bit captured by it. I like it. It makes me happy. If people are looking in this range, it's a knife that certainly I can recommend for its price point. And if you're looking for something that's like a little bit outdoorsy, but comfortable to carry every day, lightweight, I don't know, it's got its own kind of character to it. So this probably hasn't been the most concise thing, but hopefully I've conveyed my thoughts in somewhat of a way that's understandable. Anyway, I like this knife quite a bit. I hope that my dad likes it now that I'm moving it on to him for Father's Day. I think that he will. I think this is a knife. I know him pretty well. And it's also exceptionally fun for me to give knives to my dad in particular, because my dad is why I'm into knives. When I really distill it, he is the influence in my life that got me into knives and gear in general. And I like that now I can kind of be the one who knows more on the subject, not to toot my own horn compared to him, but this is the space that I dwell in, right? And so I don't think my dad is even aware that this knife exists, but I think he's going to really, really like it. And I'm excited to see him get enjoyment from it, because it's a knife that I like. Anyway, thanks, guys. This has been a fun one. If you haven't already, again, check out Rivers Edge Cutlery. They'll be linked down below. Can't say enough good stuff about those guys. And we'll see you on the next one. Thanks.